Have you been feeling too scared to try a 50-mark advanced tax question? Or are you feeling overwhelmed by the amount of information that they have? No idea where to start? Then this video is going to be perfect for you. I'm going to use a past paper question to give you lots of tips and tricks on how to approach 50-mark questions to help you not only in your practice, but also in the exam itself. My name is Aileen Edgar and I am an ACCA expert tutor, and I am going to be going through the March-June 2025 past paper that is supplied by ACCA on their practice platform. We are going to be looking at question 1, Chloe. Now, at the time of recording this video, there is an examiner's report on the ACCA website that goes along with this past paper. And the past paper is for March-June 2025. So if you are watching this in the future, please do be aware that there may be some changes in the technical content within the question that we're looking at. But in this video, we're really focusing on how we approach 50-mark questions in general, and therefore lots of the tips and tricks I'm talking about here are going to be just as applicable in the future as they are now. The first thing that you're going to see when you open up a 50-mark question, if you're doing it on the ACCA practice platform, is a list of exhibit tabs on the left-hand side. If you're looking at past papers that are in a PDF format, say in an exam kit, then they will have the exhibits listed below this first summary of information instead. But you can still get used to looking for each exhibit, and the tips that I explain in this video are going to help you nonetheless. Now, these exhibits are where you're going to find the detailed information you need for your client and also the detail of the tasks that you're to complete. We will come back to look at these in more detail later on. Before that, I want us to have a quick look at the requirement tab here. Now, there is a big difference between a Section A question and a Section B question, because although I wouldn't blame you if you thought that by clicking on requirement that you'd be seeing a list of the tasks that you're to complete, you would in fact incorrect when we are looking at a Section A question. Because if we click on that and look at what's actually included here, you'll see there really isn't much detail at all. This is how Section A questions are presented. In your exam, do feel free to open up this exhibit, but you're not going to get a lot of useful information from it. Now, it tells us that there are professional marks going to be awarded for demonstrating skills in communication, analysis and evaluation, skepticism, and commercial acumen. These are the 4 different professional skills areas, but there's no surprise there, as it's always the case with a Section A question. So you don't need to open this exhibit to find out that information. It is always going to be 10 professional marks in a Section A question. The remaining 40 marks will come from technical answers that you give. What the requirements exhibit does is it signposts us to where to find the more detailed split of our tasks. So where it says the split of the mark allocation is shown in Exhibit 4 for work to be carried out. So what we've learned from that is we should be looking at Exhibit 4. So I close down that exhibit and I just returned to this main screen here. Let's talk about what this main screen is telling us about this question as a whole. You were given a date at the top. Now, it's usually going to be the date of the actual exam, or if it is a past paper question, it should be updated to be a date that falls within the tax year that you're being examined on. You were then told that you're a student working for a firm of accountants and that we're being asked to carry out some work to do with 2 prospective clients, Chloe and her husband Tyrrell. You may think this isn't all that important, as there's not a lot of detail here, but it actually does help us a lot. Some Section A questions are effectively 2 separate questions because they involve 2 unconnected clients. Now, that's not actually the case here by the looks of it, because we have a husband and wife, but it is really important that you notice at the beginning, because it helps you manage your expectations to start forming a big picture overview of how the exam question could work out for you. Now, if it's 2 unconnected clients, what's good about that? Well, it means you can start with client number 2 and deal with their issues if those are on topics that you feel more comfortable with, for example. It can also help you to stop thinking about this as some big horrible 50-mark question and actually think of it as two smaller questions. Maybe one's worth 20 marks, the other 30. But in the case of this question that we're looking at here, I'm thinking we will perhaps have some overlap between our clients because they're married. That may well have an impact on some of the decisions we make and the advice that we give. Now, next we see that we're being told, in addition to some ethical considerations, advice is required in respect of a certain list of things. Now, before we look at the other things, let's pause a moment and think about the ethical considerations. There's always going to be 5 marks in Section A in your exam on ethics. Usually it will be a completely standalone requirement. It should be easy for you to spot there, even if there are other requirements that are worth 5 marks. Other than the ethics then, what are we being asked to do in this question? Well, we've got a variety of taxes to consider, as we can see mention of chargeable gains, employment benefits, trading expenses, which fall under income tax. We've got VAT getting a mention there. We also have some overseas issues to contend with. Now, reading that bullet point list in the question is going to help you figure out if this is the question you want to start with in your exam, or maybe you want to move on to Section B. In terms of approach then, I would make sure to then open up Exhibit 4 because it's got all the detailed work to be carried out. I wouldn't open Exhibit 1, then 2, then 3 and read all that information first. This is absolutely crucial in your exam. You do not have time to read exhibits multiple times. You will not remember the detail of them. If we open up Exhibit 4, I'm going to show one of the best things that the examiners do to help you in these big questions in the exam. So here is Exhibit 4. We aren't going to go through it in detail in this video as we're focusing on how to approach these 50-mark questions generally. But what to do when you first open the more detailed requirements exhibit is scan down. Look for where the ethics is. Remember, it's a 5-mark requirement. Now, we've got 2 here in this question, but it should be pretty obvious which one is ethics related. If this is something that you struggle to spot, you need to be dedicating more study time to the ethics part of Section A questions because ethics is one of the more predictable areas of the exam, and there are key words that will jump out to you if you've done enough question practice. These words could be, for example, objectivity, confidentiality, becoming tax advisors, threats, safeguards. All those words there are things to do with ethics and should make you comfortable that this is what that requirement is about. It's going to be a standalone requirement. So even if it wasn't the first requirement here, I'd be tempted to do it first in the exam. It would calm my nerves and I know I'd be able to do it pretty quickly. You'd then have 5 remaining tasks to do. 3 tasks to do with Chloe's personal tax affairs, 2 tasks to do with Tyrrell's unincorporated business. So this is really nicely set out by the examiner because we can focus on Chloe first and then Tyrrell, or you could focus on Tyrrell first if you wanted, because maybe VAT and trading adjustments are topic areas you're more comfortable with. And then my absolute favourite part of what the examiner does, and they didn't always used to do this in the past, but they do now, and what a great addition it is, they signpost you to exactly which exhibit to open for the information to help you answer each requirement. Now, why is this so fabulous? It's fabulous because it means you don't need to waste any time reading Exhibit 1 if you decide that VAT is a strong area for you and you want to start with C Part 1 in the exam. You can go to Exhibit 3 and open it once you've read the requirement C. It's such a time saver in the exam and you must pay attention to this. There is a lot to read in each requirement, but by doing this first before you look at the relevant exhibit for more information, your read through of that exhibit information is going to be so much more effective as you will have in your mind what you're being asked to do. If you read the exhibit first and then you came to the requirement second, you are 100% going to have to go and read that full exhibit again in detail because your first read through will not have laid down any connections in your mind because you were reading it with no purpose, no focus for your reading. Let's have a quick scan of some key things to note about these very lengthy requirements that you get in Section A in the exam. See how they're telling you to create your answer in a certain style for each of the requirements A, B and C. So in A, we need an email header at the start of our answer. I would just put to manager From advisor, date, today, subject becoming tax advisors to Chloe. Something like that. Remember, do not put your own name on there. In B, we need notes for a meeting. So I would just put notes for meeting, client, Chloe, as a header before I start to write my answer for part B. And in C, we need to prepare a memo for our client file. So I just write memo for Tyrrell, client file, date today, put that as a header before starting my answer. Now, we don't need big lengthy introductions. We don't need a lovely conclusion at the end of the whole 50 marks where you summarise what you have done. You maybe do that for other subjects. You don't need to do that for advanced tax. Another thing there'll be a lot more of to deal with in Section A questions is the number of requirements and also subtasks within those requirements. So if you take B part 2 there as an example, you can see there's 2 bullet points there. Effectively 2 subtasks to do. In B part 1, there's only 1 bullet. So this helps you to plan and break the requirements down into different steps. And also you can take the marks available and estimate them for each subtask. And that's going to help you manage your time better in the exam. Now let's look at one of the exhibits, Exhibit 1. We're going to see how we can map it back to the requirements. We were told in the detailed requirements exhibit that requirement A and B1 were linked to Exhibit 1. There's not actually anything particularly in there that we need to worry about for the ethics requirement in Exhibit 1, but it does give us some information that they've been married for many years and are in the process of becoming clients for the firm. There is some useful information to help us address why she is a UK resident for requirement B1. There's also some mentions of Exhibit 2 and 3 there, but that's really just cross-referencing information which you'd see in Exhibit 2 and 3 when you do the requirements for those parts anyway. So I could just look at the information in this exhibit alone and work away on an answer for A and B1. I haven't wasted any time reading Exhibit 2 and 3 and trying to retain any of that detail. I've also therefore reduced my overwhelm because I can focus on smaller parts of the information at a time. Now, Exhibit 2 was where we had information relevant to requirements B2 and B3. So I would only really need to read this exhibit when I was ready to create my answer for those specific requirements. In B2, we were being asked about chargeable gains regarding the sale of an asset by Chloe. Now, do you see where there's a heading there? There's 2 paragraphs of information just about that. So I don't need to read the full exhibit to be able to answer B part 2. Then there's a heading called employment contract. That's for requirement B3, and so I only need to read all of this when I'm doing my plan for that requirement. Understanding and seeing that this is how examiners lay out the information can save you so much time in the exam, reduce your overwhelm with Section A questions, and help you create better answers. Now, Exhibit 3 was only to do with requirement C in the exam, so I can just read it when I get to that time when I'm going to write an answer to Part C. Maybe I would have started here first if I felt more confident with VAT or trading expenses. There were 2 quite different topics in Part C. So again, you can see there are headings that link back to the requirements. There's one on VAT registration, and there's one on the calculation of tax-adjusted trading profit. So they relate to C1 and C2 respectively. So although you might feel that in Section A they just throw a ton of information at you, when you see how they've put the exam paper together and the signposting they use, I really hope now you can see it isn't just a mess of data. You need to pick your way through. You can approach it in a way that keeps you calm and makes it feel more manageable. The last bit of approach work I wanted to mention, and it's not really a Section A unique thing, but it's the use of different response areas for your answer. As a general rule, I'd expect to see any requirement that's purely computational to be done in the spreadsheet answer space, anything purely narrative being done in the word processor answer space. You may have some requirements that have both numbers and words, and you could do all of that in either response area or work across them both, as long as you tell your marker to look at the spreadsheet for the numbers to back up your explanations, for example. Now, remember there are communication marks in Section A in the exam, and so you need to put some sort of header at the start, for example, to, from, date, subject. I would do this in the word processing answer space and then refer my marker to the spreadsheet as and when I have done computations for different requirements in there. Here are 5 key things to do when you're faced with a 50-mark question. Spot whether you're being asked to act for one or more clients and whether they are connected to each other. Sometimes these big questions are actually really 2 ultimately separate questions for 2 different clients, thus making it not feel so intimidating. Take in the list of issues being covered. You see this on the main screen in the exam. Click on the exhibit that's called Work to be Done or something like that. In section A, this is where you're actually going to find the useful detail on the requirements and your mark allocations. Spot which exhibits are related to which requirements. Now, this is going to be signposted for you in the exam and means you don't need to waste time reading lots of information that isn't relevant for the requirement that you're working on. And remember, there are communication marks in section A, so you need to spot what format you're being asked to write your answer in. Make sure you use headings as well to break down the requirements and show good presentation and approach. So I hope you found this video useful. If you have, please do hit like and subscribe, and why not check out the rest of my channel for more helpful ATX content.